Today's daf is daf kuf tez zayin, 116. And we're going to start from daf kuf tez vav, amud sheni, 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Shmuel. Okay, so familiar Gemaras, but let's see. Oh, Sheldon's just arriving. Hi, Sheldon.
Hi, Bernard. How are you? Good evening. Bernard,
Good
I'm going to have to leave the shiur at 9 o'clock. Just want to let you know.
Okay. It's going to be a quicker share because it's very familiar, the Gemaras that we're learning anyway. So it's
Okay.
a lot of it is in the Haggadah anyway, so we'll be able to move rather swiftly.
Okay, thank you.
Amar Shmuel. Shmuel, we're just beginning. Kuf Tes, today's share is Kuf Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, Kuf Tes Zayin, 116. We're starting from Kuf Tes Vav, Amud Sheni, 4 lines from the bottom. Amar Shmuel. Shmuel said, Shmuel said, the matzah is called Lechem Oni. What does that mean? It's a type of bread. It's a type of lechem she'oinen olav dvarav. You have to say on it a lot of things. Dvarim, which we're going to say, Tanya Nami Hachi. The Brisa says the same idea. As Shmuel said, Lechem Oni. Why is the Torah call matzah Lechem Oni? So first pshat is Lechem she'oinen olav dvari harbe. It's the bread that you say on it, the Haggadah and the Hallel. You have to say the Hallel and the Haggadah. In other words, when you say the Haggadah, the matzah has to be on the table. Not only the matzah that I suspect that not only the matzah that in the seder plate, but also you should have a box of matzahs on the table, because the part of the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, to do the mitzvah properly, is to have the matzah on the table while you're saying the Haggadah and while you're saying the Hallel. And that's why one of the pshatim of lechem Oni means lechem, that you announce. Oni means you say out loud, dvarim harbe, many things, the Haggadah and Hallel. So you should have matzah on the table when you're saying the Haggadah. Davaracha, another interpretation of what this word lechem oni means. Oni means oni, a poor man's bed. Ksiv. Ma oni darkoi beprusa, just like a poor person eats broken bread, not whole. Avkan beprusa, the mitzvah tonight is to eat a broken bread. So the machlokes is that there's a machlokes rishonim and how to do it. What does this mean? What we do is that in order to make hamotzi lechem in the aretz, you're required to have a whole matzah, because lechem mishnah, and it's more proper to have a whole matzah when you say hamotzi lechem in the aretz. But when you say the bracha of achilas matzah, the next bracha, that you actually make the bracha on the broken part, the part that you broke off earlier to put away for the afikomen. The other part, that's where you're going to make the bracha al achilas matzah. Others wanted to say that even the night of Pesach, you don't need whole breads at all. You don't even need a whole matzah. That you could just have a bunch of broken pieces. But our custom is, and the way it's written, most people have that you take all 3 matzahs, the 2 whole ones, with the broken piece inside, and you make a hamotzi lechem in haaretz, and then you let one fall, the bottom one falls, and then on a whole one and on a broken one, you make al achilas matzah, and that's how a common custom is. Davaracha, another interpretation of why the Torah calls lechem the matzah lechem oni. It's because ma darke oni hu masik v'ishtei oifa. Just like a poor person, while he's firing up the oven, his wife is baking. Because he doesn't fire up the oven, then walk away and then let his wife bake. He fires it up so that his wife can bake right away because he doesn't have that much wood. Afkaname, also over here, as soon as you light up the oven, the ishtei oifa, your wife should bake it, not for the same reason that you're poor. It's because we want you to make sure that it doesn't become chametz, so you have to bake it right away. So 3 pshatim in what this lechem oni means. Lechem oni means the lechem that you say over the Hallel and the Haggadah, or lechem oni means a poor person, that it has to be broken, that the mitzvah to make the bracha has to be making on a broken piece of matzah. And then the third pshat is just like an oni bakes right away as soon as the oven is fired up, because he can't afford a lot of wood. So also you have to bake it right away and not delay it so that it doesn't become chametz. What I'm thinking is that there's a custom, a lot of people have the custom to go matzah baking. And I never saw anybody go esrog picking. You could say it's for chavivas mitzvah, but why did they say that you should do matzah baking as opposed to lulav cutting or esrog picking? The answer is because one of the pshatim of lechem oni is that you have to be baked right away, that you're involved in firing the oven. It's like a team effort, you and your wife. You light it up and your wife should bake the matzah right away. So since we see in that interpretation of lechem ani that you're involved in the baking, that's why I think people get form groups to go baking matzah. It's just an opinion. Afal pishen charosis mitzvah. So the Gemara says the charosis is not a mitzvah. V'loy mitzvah mishumay ma'aseh. Why would you have to bring charosis if it's not a mitzvah? Amar Abama, we saw this yesterday, mishum kapab, because in the romaine lettuce there is this type of worm or a little something bacteria that can make your stomach upset. So you eat the charosis, it nullifies the effects of that poison. Amar Abasi, kappa de chasa, if you have the poison of romaine lettuce, chama, you should eat radishes. Kappa de chama, but even radishes have a certain poison to it. Karsi, eat leeks. And then kappa de karsi, but if you can eat leeks, you can also find there's a poison in that. Chamimi, drink hot water. Kappa de kuli, in order to nullify the effects of this kappa, either the poison or the worm of all these vegetables, drink chamimi, and drink hot water, and that will nullify whatever is happening inside your stomach. It'll make it better. Hot water is a good elixir for all these types of ailments. Adahachi v'hachi, but while it's bothering you, name a hachi. You say the following words. Now these words make no sense, but in Chazal knew that this was like a magic words that will automatically make you feel better. You say kappa kappa, poison poison. The cherilach, I remember you, u'l'shei b'nesech, your 7 daughters, u'l'smanei kalasech, and your 8 daughters-in-laws. That means, I don't know what it means. It doesn't mean anything, but somehow saying these words will nullify the effects of the poison in the romaine lettuce. But the Mishnah said, Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok says, mitzvah, it is a mitzvah to eat charosis. So Gemara says, my mitzvah, what kind of mitzvah is this? Rabbi Levi Omer, zeicher latapuach. We remember the apple tree. The Jews, to have the women, Nishdashim Sekanius, would run after having relations with their husband. 9 months later, they would go to an apple tree somewhere out there, far away from the city, and give birth under an apple tree and let the kids stay there. And they gave birth with ease. So it was a special protection that Hashem accorded the women, and while they were giving birth and their husbands were slaving away. To remember that apple tree, we have the charosis. That's the mitzvah. Rabbi Yochanan says, it reminds you of the cement. The work was laying bricks and building things. So we remind us of the cement. So that's why you eat charosis. So it reminds you of something. So therefore it's a mitzvah. Amar Abaye said, Hilkach, therefore, if you want to remember both, you want to remember apples and cement. You have to make it sour, but you have to make it thick. You make the charosis sour by adding apples and vinegar or whatever. To remember the apples, the apple tree. But you have to make it a little thick. To remember the cement. Not only that, Tanya Kavosad Rabbi Yochanan, we see that what Rabbi Yochanan said, that the charosis reminds you of the cement. There's a brisa that actually says it. It says that the brisa says tavlim. You're supposed to put long cinnamon sticks, like sticks, in the charosis. Zeichel tevim. That reminds you of the straw. Charosis, and you put the rest of the charosis is zeichel tit, reminds you of the cement. And Amar Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok, Rabbi Elazar Bar Tzadok said, the people who would sell, these are merchants, like the storekeepers who sell from windows in Yerushalayim. They used to sell, let's say, the grocery stores. They would have signs, come, everybody buy your spices, your cinnamon sticks for the mitzvah of chorosis. So that apparently the way the signs were hung up in Jerusalem, it seemed to go with the opinion that having chorosis is not just a good, it's a good idea to have chorosis. It's actually a mitzvah because it's supposed to remind you of something. And I guess if you're a shopkeeper, you want to tell everybody it's a mitzvah, so everybody will come to buy it. So that's why they went with Reb Elazar ben Tzadok's opinion. I guess there's many recipes in chorosis and different things. We put walnuts and certain items that are listed in Shir Hashirim. And some even put wine. Make sure to have wine in there that reminds you of the blood of the blood that was spilled during that time. That's a very interesting type of food with millions of different minhagim and recipes. All good. All right, the Mishnah begins. The Mishnah goes back to the Agada. Mozgu loy, they pour for the owner of the house. Koi sheni, the second cup. Bekan, when the son would see that, haben shayla aviv. That right now the son will ask his father, why are you pouring the cup? We should be washing and eating. We just made kiddush. So and if it's an astute kid, or the other girsa is v'chein haben shayla. This is what the son should ask. If he's not sleeping, he should be asking, why are you pouring the second cup? Then ein das baben. But if the son doesn't have enough intelligence, or das means always awareness. When you say ata chayne lodam das, means you give the man awareness. He's aware of his higher self. So if ein das baben, if the son shows no awareness what's going on, of him malamde, the father has to teach him. And the father has to teach him the following words. Although they learn it in school, the father is supposed to teach you. Why is this night different? Every night we eat. If we want chametz or we can eat matzah. Tonight I only see matzah on the table. Then the son should ask, we eat every type of vegetable. Tonight, morar. I see that we're strict about having morar, and even for karpas we're using morar. So we eat roasted meat, cooked meat, very cooked meat, and averagely cooked meat every night. Everything has to be roasted. Not only the carbon pesach was roasted, but as we learned that we also brought a carbon chagivga. So with the carbon pesach, erev yontif, that was also roasted. So we spoke about the matzah, morar, and the carbon pesach. That was what the son asked. This was in the time of the Beis Hamikdash. And then we add, we dip one time. Tonight we did 2 times. According to the awareness of the son, the father teaches him what the answer is. You have to first understand your son before you start off teaching him. If you don't understand your son, you start teaching him the wrong way, you're going to turn him off. You have to first understand the son, and then the father teaches him the answer. Then the Gemara, the Mishnah continues. You start talking about the degrading parts of the Jewish people, that we were avodah zarah, we were curious people. We were always searching for the truth, and therefore our great-great-grandfathers Terach, and going back all the way, was a avodah zarah. So we don't come from such great yichus. So we didn't, but we worked on it, and we were zeichet through Avraham Avinu, Messiah b'shvach, and we end off with the praises of the geula and the future redemption. The Doirish Merami Ovid Avi actually Yigum Parsha Kula. And you darshan the Arami Ovid Avi, that part of the Bikurim, that pasuk there in the drasha that's in the parsha, until you finish the whole parsha with the drasas Chazal. Tarabanu, the rabbis taught Chacham Benoi, if the son is smart, Shayale, he asks the father. If you don't have a smart kid, Ishtay Shalta, your wife should ask you. Lav, if you don't have a wife, you have to ask yourself, because as we said often, that part of the mitzvah Sipitis Mitzrayim requires you to say it b'derech shaila u'tshuva, question and answer. And if nobody's around, ask yourself the question. Even 2 Talmidei Chacham who know the Hilchas Pesach, they have to ask each other. And what the point here is that there is another way to be Yaitz to the mitzvah Sipur Yisrael, not only by telling the story, but even by talking about the halachas of Pesach. So that's what the Brisa emphasizes. The two Talmidei Chacham for sure know the story, but Hilchas Pesach is a very deep topic, an expansive topic. They have to ask each other halachas of Pesach, and that will be also part of the mitzvah Sipur Yisrael. The Mishnah said, so that's what we say. Maskif la Rava. From this way, the version of the Brisa, from the way the version of the Mishnah is, it means that all year on supper, you have to dip one time. So that doesn't make sense. Every year, if you don't like vegetables, you don't have to eat every supper a vegetable. Maskif la Rava, Atav kol yomer le sagdle matbele chadazima. Is it true that every night of the year you have to dip at least one time? It doesn't make sense. We have to dip pamachas. Why? This is what the Mishnah means to say. All other nights of the year, you don't have to dip even one time. So there's no obligation. But the child says, the child says that tonight, I see there's an obligation to teach to dip two times. So that's still not so emes. Maskif lo Rav Safra. I think Rav Safra was had the midah of emes. Do children understand what an obligation is? They don't know what obligation is. The word chiyuv is not in their vocabulary. So how could they add the words chayovim l'tabel? That makes no sense. You can't put words into the child's mouth and have him fake an understanding. I learned that writing my son's pshat. You got to make it whatever they could understand, and not a fancy language that they don't understand. So you can't put the word chiyuv into that third question. El Omer of Safra Hochiktani. This is the third question. The fourth question. Ein onu matbilin afilu pamachas. The son says we don't have to dip even one time all year. But tonight I see you're dipping shtei pamim. Not that you're obligated to dip. He just says I'm observing that you're dipping two times. And tell me why you're dipping two times. Maska benus b'sayim b'shvach. You have to start off with something degrading and end off on a high note. My begnus, what's something degrading? You have to say in the very beginning, our great-great-grandfathers, Avram's grandparents and great-grandparents were searching, and they were worshiping idols. Shmuel says you don't have to go back. You just talk about Avodah Meyinu, that we were slaves. So it's a machlekes. We do both. We start off with Avodah Meyinu, but then we go even further back on Metchila Avodah Zorah Hayavasenu. New Gemara. Amalei Rav Nachman LeDori Avdi. Nachman said to Dori, he had a servant called Dori. He said, Avda demapik le Mori lecheres. The son that his master, a slave that his master let him go free. Not only that, V'yav le kasper dahava. Not only did the master let him go free, he gave him gold and silver. My boy lemeimale. What do you think the slave owes to the master? Amalei. So Dori said, you should thank the master and give him awesome praises. So he understood, Rav Nachman understood from this person, Dori, that was an intelligent answer. Amalei, he said, I don't have to say the manashtana. I see you're intelligent. If you say the manashtana, I don't have to repeat it because I have somebody to talk to. Again, we saw that if the child is not smart, you have to say the manashtana. But if you have somebody else who is intelligent is saying the manashtana, then you could go straight into Avodah Meyinu and you don't have to repeat the manashtana. Pasach v'amar, so that's why Rav Nachman started Avodah Meyinu. He skipped the whole manashtana. That's what we said. Now the Mishnah says another point of the mitzvah Sipur Yisrael, which we discussed. You have to expand on the whole story from the very beginning. You have to do it in a question and answer. And now we're going to learn another thing about Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim. In order for you to be Yotzi, the mitzvah of Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, you have to describe the reason of the mitzvahs that you're doing that night. So that's what Rabbi Gamliel, Hoya Omer, Rabbi Gamliel said always by his Seder, Hoya Omer, by his Pesach Seder, he would say the following. Kol Shloi Omar, we're on Amud Cheni. Shloi Shadvarim Elu Pesach. If you don't say the following things on Pesach during your Seder, Lo yotzi deichabosei, you weren't yoitze the chiyuv of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Not the chiyuv of matzah, but the chiyuv of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Because the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is to describe the mitzvahs that you got. The Elohei, Pesach, Matzah, Mora. We got 3 mitzvahs, and you have to tell the kids why you got these mitzvahs. So Pesach, how do you know you have to tell the reason why? Ashim, you have to tell everybody, Ashim Shepasach Hamokim Abotei V'Seinu B'Mitzrayim. God's passed over our houses of our fathers in Mitzrayim. Shenema B'Matam Zevach Pesach Hu Hashem Ashapasa. And here, this is the key word. Ba'amartem. You have to explain the reason why you're doing the Korban Pesach. So now we have a pasuk that tells you why you have to do the Korban Pesach. And we know that Matzah, Mora, and Pesach have a hekesh. What applies by one applies by all of them. So just like we see by the Korban Pesach, you have to describe the reason. So also by Matzah, you have to describe the reason why you're doing that mitzvah. And by Mora, you have to describe the reason why you're doing that mitzvah. Matzah, Ashim Shenagalu Aveseinim Mitzrayim. Matzah has to be because our fathers were redeemed from the Mitzrayim. Shnema, they didn't even have time to let it bake. Mara, why do we eat the mara? Because they embittered the lives of our fathers in Mitzrayim. And that's why I have these 3 mitzvahs. And I have to say that in order to be mekayim the mitzvah of Sipa Yitzias Mitzrayim. Next, B'chol Doivadar. And this is why the Yitzias Mitzrayim is the hardest mitzvah. Is the hardest mitzvah in Kol HaTorah Kula. It's the hardest mitzvah. Why is it the hardest mitzvah? Because the pasuk requires you in every generation, Chayiv Odom Liris is Atzvay Kilu Yatzim Mitzrayim. That night you have to see yourself. You have to have your imagination that as if you just left Mitzrayim. Shenema Bigat Levincha B'Yemahu Zitlema Bavazel Asa Hashem Li B'Mitzrayim. That Hashem did it for me in Mitzrayim. So you have to work up such a sweat that that on that night of Pesach you have to be Rabashkin, getting that the warden coming into his cell telling him you could pack up and go. Something like that kind of shock you should be in. It's that kind of sweat. And that's what makes it the hardest mitzvah. Therefore, after we worked ourselves into such an ecstasy, therefore, all sorts of vocabulary words that describe praises and lauds to the God. We praise God for doing all these mitzvahs. He took us out. He took us out from slave to freedom. From depression to simcha during Kriyas Yamsuf. From morning liyamtiv to a day of a holiday. In other words, that happened during the Egel, when God was going to destroy us, and then He gave us the second luchas, which was on Yom Kippur. Ma'afela li'ar from darkness of the midbar to the great light of coming into Eretz Yisrael. Mishibud, from being enslaved in our soul, lugula to redemption. The Noam Elefonov, hallelujah, we're going to say the hallelujah. Now, the Mishnah continues, how much halal do you have to say? In other words, we know that they split the halal because we want to say halal over the matzah, and yet we don't want you to say so much that the kids are going to fall asleep. So that's why they split the halal in 2 parts. So you want to say a little bit of halal, but not so much. So Beishamai says, you just say the first chapter. Ad Ema Banim Smecha. Beisilil says, you say B'tzeis Yisrael ad Chalomish L'mayim Moim. Because B'tzeis Yisrael talks about when the Jews left Mitzrayim. Even though the Jews didn't leave Mitzrayim until the next day, Beisilil says you can say the 2 first chapters of halal. The Chaysim Begula, and you say Baruch Atah Hashem Goal Yisrael. That's what the Tanakama holds. Rab Tarfon Omer, you say Asher Golanu Begol as Aresein Mitzrayim B'Lo Haychaysim. There is no end. You say Baruch Atah Hashem Asher Golanu. He redeemed us and He redeemed our fathers in Mitzrayim. And you don't end because it's not a long bracha. Rabbi Kiva says you have to add on words to the bracha. You thank Hashem for the Geulas Mitzrayim, and you say your hope is for the Geula, the future. You say Asher Golanu Begol Aresein Mitzrayim Asher Kain Hashem Elokeinu V'Elokei Aviseinu. So God, the God of our fathers, let it be your will that what? Yageinu, we should reach. L'miyadem, l'regolim acherem, habam, l'krasein l'sham. that the new Yom Tovs and the new Rosh Hashanahs and all sorts of appointed holidays should come very quickly and greet us in peace. That means we should be smeichim, happy in the Bevinit Irecha, with the building of your city, V'sasan, and joyful b'avodas with the service in the Beis Hamikdash. V'noichel sham, we hope one day to eat min apsachim and azvachim, from the carbon Pesach and the carbon Chagiga. Ad Baruch At Hashem Gal Yisrael. I think a Matzah Shabbos this year, since Erev Pesach is Shabbos, we don't say min hazvachim because that refers to the carbon Chagiga. And when Erev Pesach comes out on Shabbos, you only brought the carbon Pesach. You did not bring a carbon Chagiga. So some people dropped min hazvachim on Matzah Shabbos. But I think in most Haggadahs it says you should say min apsachim as well, because on a normal Seder night you add two things on your table: carbon Pesach and a carbon Chagiga. One more thing. What?
Huge. It's a bakasha for next year, and next year we don't know when Pesach will be.
Oh, that's true.
Right.
That's right. That's why. So why would they have a girsa? I have to look at my Haggadah, but I remember there's like a girsa change.
Yeah, there's a girsa change for this year. It could be just like we're doing this year. We try to reflect. Okay, that's what we should have, the same type of commemoration. But technically, we don't know what next year is going to be. If it's Kiddush Al Pi Re'iyah,
right? There may be another Shabbos.
Never know.
Okay, let's just do just another 2 minutes over here. Amar Rava. We brought a pasuk that says, how do you know you have to see yourself leaving Mitzrayim? Because it says, "V'gat levincha bavu Hashem asa Hashem li chayiv odem la liris esatzmoi." Because "V'gat levincha b'yom hahu bavu Hashem asa Hashem li b'mitzeis Mitzrayim." Rava doesn't like that pasuk because that doesn't teach you for generations you have to see yourself as leaving Mitzrayim. So Amar Rava, you have to add another pasuk. Us was taken out of there. In other words, from that pasuk, it's more clearer that even here in 2021, you have to view yourself as if you left Mitzrayim. Done. So that's why you'll see in the Haggadah, it adds also the pasuk, "V'isanu us ha'itzi misham." And that, again, that's what makes this the hardest mitzvah in Kol HaTorah, Kula, is this mitzvah of Seder night. Amar Rava. Rava said, "Matzah tzarich lagbia." When you say matzah, you have to lift it up. Mara tzarich lagbia, you have to lift up the mara. Basar, the meat, the shank bone, ain't tzarich lagbia. Don't lift it up. Don't. It should be an issa to do it. El shenir ka'echel kachem bechutz. It looks like you're showing everybody they eat kachem outside the Beis Hamikdash. Don't lift it up. When it says matzazu, marazu, you lift it up, but not the basar. Now we talk about a blind person. Amar Ravacha Bayankov. Suma patam eloima haggadah. A blind person, Ravacha Bayankov said, doesn't have to say the Haggadah. Why? He has a Gzeir Shava. Ksiv Hacha, it says in the pasuk, Bavu Zeh. The ones that have to say the Haggadah is Bavu Zeh, Asa Hashem Li, and Ksiv Hasam by Ben Soyer or Moirer. In order to have a wayward son, the parents have to both be able to see. A blind parent cannot have a son, a Ben Soyer or Moirer. And it says B'nei Nuzeh. Malahalan, just like by Ben Soyer Amara Prat Lasuma, we exclude a blind person. Afkan, by the Haggadah, we also Prat Lasuman. A blind person is potter from saying the Haggadah. So the Gemara says, how is that true? Eini, that's not true. Merema said a statement. Sha'altinhu l'Rabbanan debei Rabbi Yosef. I asked the yeshiva boys from the yeshiva of Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Yosef was the rabbi, was the Rosh Yeshiva, and he was saying the Haggadah and being mitzi everybody. You know, not everybody said the Haggadah. They didn't have a printing press then. So Rabbi Yosef was saying it for everybody. Who led the Haggadah in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yosef? Amru, Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef was the one that said. Now again, Rabbi Yosef was blind. And then, who said the Haggadah in the yeshiva of Rav Sheshes? Rav Sheshes was also blind. Amru, Rav Sheshes. So how could they have been mitzi other people with the Haggadah if a blind person is potter from the Haggadah? If you're potter from something, you can't be mitzi somebody who's chayiv in something. So the Rav Sheshes and the Rav Yosef, they're both Rosh Yeshivas, were potter from saying the Haggadah. How could they be mitzi their students in the Haggadah? So that's a question against Rav Acha Bayankov, who said a summa is potter from saying the Haggadah. And for the Gemara, Amri, the Gemara answers, Rav Sheshes Kasavri, Rabbanan, the Rabbanan held matzah b'zman hazeh, matzah Rabbanan, matzah b'zman hazeh the Rabbanan. Matzah to nowadays is only the Rabbanan, and the Haggadah is also the Rabbanan. So the whole thing is a drabanan anyway. So therefore, the blind person can be mitzvah everybody. So the Gemara says, Michlal, it must be the Rabbi Yaakov Yaakov Sava Matzah B'zman Hazeh Daraisa. Rabbi Yaakov Yaakov, who said Summa doesn't not have to read the Agadah because he holds Matzah is B'zman Hazeh is Daraisa. And if it's Daraisa, then only people who are chayiv in the Matzah and are chayiv in the Haggadah. And a blind person, they never gave him the chayiv to say the Haggadah, so he's potter from saying the Haggadah. That's what it would seem like. For Rav Acha Yaakov, who the Amma Matzah B'zman Hazeh Rabbanim. Rav Acha Yaakov is of the opinion that B'zman Hazeh Matzah is only the Rabbanim. The answer is Kusavar Rav Acha Yaakov hold true. It's the Rabbanim, but it called the Tikkun Rabbanim came the Raisa Tikkun. If the Rabbanim said that we should eat matzah, they made it as if it was a mitzvah sasei min Torah. So if it's like a mitzvah sasei min Torah, then only people who can see are chayiv in the Haggadah, not people who are blind. And that would be the opinion of Rabbi Yaakov Yankov. So the Gemara asks back, what do you mean? Rav Shesha, Rav Yosef Nami, Havade called the Tikkun Rabbanan came the Raisa Tikkun. That's a rule all over Shas, that whenever the Rabbanan established that you should do a mitzvah, they made it like it as if it's a Daraisa mitzvah. So therefore, the question is, why would Rav Sheshes and Rav Yosef, if they hold that it's Ke'ein Daraisa Tikkun, then they should treat the Haggadah like it's a mitzvah Daraisa. So how could they be mitzi their students? Their students are chayev Daraisa and they're potem Daraisa. So the Gemara goes and rejects everything that we said until now. Hachi hashta, you can't compare. Bishla mahasam, the Gemara says you don't have Gzeira Shava. The Rav Sheshes and Rav Acha Bayankov do not have Gzeira Shava. What started this whole thing that a blind person is potter from reading the Haggadah is because we have Gzeira Shava. Bavur Zeh to B'neinu Zeh. That's and Rav Acha Bayankov does hold of that Gzeira Shava that exempts a blind person from the Haggadah. But Rav Sheshes and Rav Yosef did not have that tradition because they said Bishla Mahasam. I understand the word Zeh over there is extra. The Havalei Lemichta B'neinuhu. By the wayward son, the Ben Saramara could have said the word who, except B'neinu Zeh. It says the word Zeh. So there, the Zeh it opens it up to a possible Gzeira Shava. Shmamina, Prat L'Sumina Adasa. It's coming to say, by the wayward son, that the parents have to point and say, this is our boy. And therefore, that's why you say by Ben Sarah Moira, a blind person cannot have a Ben Sarah Moira. But over here, Rav Sheshes and Rav Yosef are of the opinion, Ilav Bavazeh, my lichtav. What should it say instead of the word Zeh? Because Ela Bavu Matzah Marahu Asa. It's coming because the word Zeh refers to not an individual, it refers to items, the matzah and the maror. So it had to write the word Zeh. So it's not empty or an extra word, an unnecessary word that opens it up to a Gzeira Shava. The Bavu Zeh refers to the matzah and maror, and it's not an empty word. So therefore, since the Torah had to write Zeh, it's not open for a Gzeira Shava to compare it to Ben Sarah Murrah. So it could very well be that Ben Sarah Murrah does not apply by blind parents, but the Haggadah could apply to even a blind person. So what we come to the conclusion is that the two blind Rosh Hashivas, Rav Yosef and Rav Sheshes, who were mitzi their students with the Haggadah by saying it, and the students didn't say it, they held that a blind person is chayiv da'iraisa in saying the Haggadah, and Rav Acha Bayankov disagreed. He had a Gzeira Shava.
Very interesting.
All right, so
thank you.
Another daf.
Yep.
Very, very interesting.
Close. Okay.
Okay.
Take care. Good night, everybody.